Why do women not speak up? Another reason that women don't speak up is psychological conditioning. And what's that conditioning? Psychological conditioning of history. Our societal conditioning only reinforces these false beliefs and fears. For thousands of years, women were treated as less than men, even as subhuman, and therefore were in effect or even legally the property of men. The impact of this system of dominance cannot disappear in a mere 100 or 200 years. The generational influence of these harmful beliefs lingers persistently in our laws, our economics, and our social consciousness. Many of our laws and the basis of our social structures were created when men considered women to be their property and lesser beings in certain ways. Generations of social conditioning undermine a woman's sense of full ownership and encourages women to remain in a lower relative position to men. We hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal, and they are endowed by their Creator with certain unalienable rights, that among these are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. Why did the Founding Fathers put that sentence into the U.S. Constitution? Our right to life is the right to the physical protection and integrity of our bodies. Our right to liberty is our right to not be enslaved and not imprisoned without due process of law. Our right to pursue happiness is a right to autonomy, freedom of choice, freedom to make money, and freedom to build a good life without arbitrary impediments or blocks. Inalienable, right? It says we have an inalienable right, means we cannot be separated from it, whether by our own choice or our government. Basically, we have an inalienable right to self-determination or self-ownership. Sadly, the Founding Fathers only believed that about white men. They embraced the correct principle, but promoted a prejudiced and narrow application. Their shocking excuse for not extending these same rights to women and to people of color was that neither group was fully human, but closer to an animal in nature and possibly without souls. I was shocked to discover that women are still today not considered to have equal status with men in the U.S. Constitution. Supreme Court Justice Scalia stated directly that the Constitution does not guarantee equality for women. For more than 200 years, women have waited and agitated for the equality promised to men by the Declaration of Independence. Numerous attempts to pass an equal rights amendment to the Constitution have been instigated by both political parties as a bipartisan effort. We often ignore how profoundly the words that we use and hear, repeated over and over, influence our view of the world and ourselves. Imagine if our children were taught instead that all people are created equal, that they are endowed by their Creator with certain unalienable rights, that among these are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. How might that affect how we think of ourselves, how we think of our world? Women today are getting closer to finally being included with full rights under the Constitution. But you can learn more about this fight for equal rights is not merely theoretical, but affects women daily at work and home. An enlightening book on this movement is Equal Means Equal by Jessica Neuwirth. How did this concept of women as property instead of equal partners come about? According to some anthropological research, the enslavement of women came with the agricultural revolution, when for the first time in history, food, which was similar to wealth, could be amassed in amounts that could not be consumed in a lifetime. It became important for a man to know that the person he was leaving his wealth to at his death was his physical progeny. The only way to do that was to make sure the woman didn't have sex with anyone else. Thus began the tradition of ownership and locking women up, either physical bondage, harems, foot binding in China, house imprisonment, or legal bondage through marriage laws that removed their power of agency and made them the property of their husbands. In the earliest communities of hunter-gatherers, women often had relatively equal or even greater power than men in the matriarchies. But during the agricultural era, women lost their autonomy and freedom and became the property of men. They were bought and traded and often used as workers and sex slaves in their husband's home. Up until a couple hundred years ago in the Western world, a husband could beat or kill his wife, and it was considered within his rights. With dowries, a woman's family secured their connection and alliance with powerful men by turning over the woman's inherited wealth fully to their husbands. So the women weren't allowed to control their own wealth or their property, even if they were very wealthy. When they married, the control of all of that went to their husbands, and they lost it. We forget something our ancestors knew. Women are a critical resource. Women are asset producers. We create something that men cannot get on their own, the most valuable resource on the planet, the human workforce. Historically, that value was measured in sons to inherit, soldiers to fight, and workers to build. Power has always been about resource control. So it is not surprising the enormous effort made over thousands of years to control women, because women create the most important resource on the planet. Women won the right to vote only 100 years ago with the ratification of the 19th Amendment in 1920 after a long and dangerous suffragette campaign. This is in the US. It is worth noting that Black men won the right to vote under the 14th Amendment 52 years earlier in 1868. It was more palatable to society that former male slaves could vote than women of any race. However, it is not accurate to equate the position of women, even in the 19th century, with institutionalized slavery, as that is not a true comparison. While there certainly were societies and situations in which women were effectively enslaved, by the 19th century in the Western world, at least, the treatment of women was by no means on the same level of subjugation as slavery. Rather, the excuse I see subtly permeating these attitudes and arguments both then and now are, it's not that bad. We, the male patriarchy, don't treat you that terribly. You have it pretty good. We are taking care of you. You don't need a voice. You don't need rights or equal pay because we're here to take care of you. Head pat. If you had those things, what would you do with them? Wouldn't your life be more difficult if you had to fend for yourself? It sounds eerily like what they used to say to slaves. Newsflash. We women do fend for ourselves and have done so for a long time. It makes it a heck of a lot harder to take care of ourselves and our children when we are not being treated or paid as equals with men. I think a more accurate comparison would be how we view children, indulgent and condescending with an underlying assumption of incompetence and a lack of autonomy. When a child demands what it wants, it is scolded for being difficult, for not being a good child. The message is, I know what's best for you. You don't need to speak up. In fact, good children just accept what they are given with gratitude and stay quiet. Children should be seen and not heard. That kind of message. I hear these exact messages in discussions about women. Jokes about women who talk too much imply that we should be silent. Women who stand up for themselves and demand what they want are vilified as being difficult or a bitch, which implies that women should passively accept what is given to them with gratitude and not demand what they are worth or owed. Be aware that under the law, children are still the actual physical property of their parents. For a child to escape abusive parents, the child must go through a legal process called emancipation. Does that sound familiar? Otherwise, every time the child runs away, he will be returned to his owners. Further, the lumping together in the phrase of women and children inescapably implies that women are helpless and need to be taken care of. No wonder we are confused. On the one hand, we are told we are helpless and should let others make decisions for us. On the other hand, it is also implied that men are helpless, and it is our duty to take care of them and sacrifice ourselves for their happiness. What are the so-called benevolent messages we receive in society that we buy into because they sound good? You are cute and beautiful. You shouldn't have to do this difficult task, implying that our physical appearance is paramount or the most important, or that beauty somehow makes us less capable. Keep quiet and don't cause a fuss, implying that there is someone more capable to take care of the matter and that we are just imposing by expressing our opinion. One of the arguments against equal pay for decades, implicit or explicit, is women don't need as much money as a man because they have or they should have a husband to take care of them. This assumption that all women are taken care of by men is clearly not even close to reality. We have a divorce rate of over 50%, and 70% of the nation's poor are women and their children. I go into greater depth, revealing more subliminal and overt messages we are fed about the nature of women that saps our strength and confidence in Chapter 4.